Greetings. Welcome to the Emerald Choral Academy. I am Gary Cannon, the Artistic Director of the Emerald Ensemble, a professional choir based in Seattle. This Emerald Choral Academy is a series of interactive webinars during which our area's leading professional choral personalities reveal their personal tricks of the trade to community singers. These webinars are then made available freely to singers across the world via YouTube. This is the 7th session of the 2nd semester of the Emerald Choral Academy. The Emerald Ensemble is very grateful to our generous donors and organizations who have made this project possible, including For Culture and the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture. We encourage anyone participating or viewing this webinar to make a donation as you are able at emeraldensemble.org. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and join our mailing list to hear about future sessions of the Academy and the other activities of the Emerald Ensemble. This webinar is being recorded. By participating, you are granting the Emerald Ensemble permission to share your contribution. Your microphones and cameras will remain off for the duration of this presentation. You can, however, ask questions to the presenters by typing into the chat or Q&A features at the bottom of your screen. Periodically, I will interject to field your questions to tonight's panel. This session is a new format for the Emerald Choral Academy. Rather than one presenter, we'll offer 4 panelists. I will be one of them. Another is J. Scott Kovacs, the Executive Director of the Emerald Ensemble, and a highly experienced soloist and chorister across the country at different times. One of the Emerald Ensemble's regular singers is soprano Rebekah Gilmore, who has the longest title of anyone at Seattle's St. Mark's Cathedral, the Associate Musician and Director of the Cathedral Choir School and the Interim Minister of Youth. Did I get that right? Oh, good. And finally, we are especially honored to include tonight Dr. Karen Thomas, the conductor and artistic director of Seattle Pro Musica, one of truly the leading choirs in the entire country. Our topic today is, what is blend? This is a controversial term in the field of choral music. Fortunately, the 4 of us are all friends here. We've all had drinks with each other before. As I told my wife as I was coming downstairs before this event, I said, there will be laughter and virtual fisticuffs. So we can expect a little of everything, perhaps. Scott, Rebekah, Karen, welcome to the Emerald Choral Academy. Let's begin. I'll begin by posing the question directly to Rebekah. Rebekah, as you walk in the door tonight, what is blend?
Thank you for asking, Gary. Thank you for having me here, and hello to everybody. When I think of choral blend, I think about the creation of a new instrument, taking multiple instruments, multiple people, multiple throats, and creating a new whole, a new sound that has never been heard before. And that, what a gift. It's so many different combinations and different timbres that can be created by our individual voices. But what makes that happen is hopefully what we'll talk about tonight, and so many facets that that contribute to that new instrument being created.
Starting us out with philosophy. I love it. That's great. Karen, let's toss it to you. What is blend?
Gosh, that Rebekah, I love that answer, and that's in a different way of wording things, kind of what I would think of as well, and I'll take it to an even more philosophical level, maybe or maybe not. Blend is about listening. So as a singer, as a chorister, blend is about listening louder than you sing, and so it's about making yourself part of the bigger whole, as Rebekah might have said, the new instrument, subsuming yourself to that bigger whole rather than taking a lead or a more soloistic approach in that whole.
Wonderful. I love these two answers because they make mine sound really lame. So Scott, let's go to you. What is blend?
Those are incredible answers, and I want to just offer at the end of Karen's wonderful idea of not being soloistic in the blend, that the Compline choir enjoys an expression that we use when someone's being particularly soloistic, and it's one sweet voice above the rest, and it's just a very kind way of reminding somebody that we're an ensemble, and to kind of pull it back a little bit. I'm these wonderful philosophical and artistic answers. I'm a pedagogue, so I have a nerdy kind of straightforward answer, which is that blend is our collective term of art that describes an aesthetically pleasing, homogeneous tone in ensemble singing. And that for us as choral directors and singers, that tone can vary from warm to bright, depending on the choices that we make artistically and interpretively in the music. And that's my pedagogue's answer to the question, what is blend?
Okay. I've decided I'm going to change my answer right out the gate. And we're kind of skirting around similar issues. I'll define blend with another single word term and just say unity, however that may be, in whatever aspects. Now, this leads to the various question of what variables do you each as conductors and singers and teachers, do we each, put as the top priorities for this? Well, maybe before that we should ask, do any of us ever or occasionally or rarely use the word blend in our rehearsals? Anybody confessing to it? It's rare for me, but I do it sometimes.
I use the word intonation instead of blend with my choir. With my choirs.
Yeah, I'm sure I say blend, but more often I would say something that's more specific. I would talk about matching vowels. I would talk about matching dynamics. It would be something specific. And I remember hearing Robert Shaw in an interview once saying something like, as a conductor, I mean, you can't just say, blend, you dummies. You have to tell the choir what it is that's causing things not to sound unified. Is it intonation? Is it vowel? Is it dynamics? What are the things? And that's the part of the conductor's job, is to identify those specifically, so that, for the choral singer who's in the midst of a bunch of sound, doing their best to do what they do, they don't necessarily have that slightly distanced perspective of hearing the whole ensemble. So it can be hard to judge as a singer. Am I too quiet? Am I too loud? Etc.
There's nothing quite as frustrating as having a conductor look at you and go, that's not in tune. Well, why is it not in tune? Or that's not blended. Or, basses, you're flat. Well, how do we fix it? There's often a lack of instruction that happens, and it's frustrating for the ensemble, and it's frustrating for the conductor. And there has to be some sort of approach, some sort of pedagogy, some sort of fix, some sort of instruction that helps guide those very things. As Karen said, I think ensemble in general is an important part of reaching blend, and knowing that dynamic changes can affect ensemble and blend, and knowing how to cope with vowel changes when dynamics are changing also. Those are all part of coaching and bringing an ensemble into that alignment, into that attunement, I guess is really the word, right? Attunement. I know as a singer, as a professional choral singer, one of the variables for me is repertoire and style. I sing Wenn ich im stillen Friedhof gehe very differently than I do Der Geisthilft. They require a different timbre from me. They require a different approach vocally, and making sure that that I'm doing that in alignment, in attunement, and unity with the people on either side of me is very, very important.
I was going to also quote Robert Shaw, just that I was trained with the understanding that blend actually starts with rhythm. And that if people are not getting to the same point at the same time, everything gets misaligned. And that includes the shape of their face, that includes their intentionality around their production. But that's the first building block to all of it. And Robert Shaw would say rhythm and vowels. So I come out of the Lutheran choral tradition with Weston Noble at Luther College, and he loved to quote Robert Shaw. And so we did so much with rhythmic accuracy as that fundamental to everybody being in the same place and not being shaken up. But I'm with you, Scott, that there are so many questions to this. I was joking with Gary ahead of time, like, what's the group we're talking about? How many people on a part? What kind of music are we doing? Because it all contributes to, are we looking for a cloudy blend or are we looking for a laser blend? All of that is reliant on so much more information. So more information, Gary.
Well, ironically, I was going to say we've agreed on some general things right up the front. So we can, as we've done in this series before, really dig into details. And we've identified several attributes of blend: rhythm, intonation, vowels, dynamics, and more. How about we pick one and think about, okay, well, how does one help a choir or even an individual, well, I guess choir, to find that kind of blend beyond just saying blend, you rascals? That's how I remember the thing. Or or just listen to your neighbor, just listen, that's all, which we've all done that. I certainly have. Let's start with intonation. Scott brought that up. In what way do you, as conductors and I'm working with very different ensembles and types of individuals, how do you equate intonation with blend, and how do you use intonation to create a sense of unity or blend?
Big topic, Gary.
Well, it's more specific than what is blend, right?
It's good.
But it's a good place to start when we're talking about blend.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about intonation is that it in itself is affected by things like vowels, right? You can all sing a unison, but if the vowels don't match, it's not in tune. So, you know, in helping a choir to sing in tune, starting with things like matched vowels, you know, helps to solidify that intonation, right? Helping people to, you know, just go into a real bare bones place of, you know, let's work on singing fifths that are in tune fifths, not piano equal tempered fifths, right? So getting starting to work away from the piano, which is a whole nother topic in itself too. You know, what kind of intonation, what kind of temperament are we talking about? Which is that we could have a whole session on that, couldn't we? So,
or three.
Yeah.
You know,
in the context then of choral music, do you train your singers specifically in different capacities? Rebekah, especially for you when you're working with young singers, do you try to train them to think of tuning intervals in a different way than the piano?
We rehearse primarily without a piano, and so they do grow accustomed to it. I'm a nitpicker about intonation, but I also recognize that there's a level of vocal facility that's needed to be able to make those really fine adjustments regularly, you know, accurately again and again. And especially with those growing voices, their instrument is so frequently changing on them that I'm very gentle. But I also feel a responsibility to call it as I hear it. immediately, so that they aren't sitting there. And I think this goes for all singers, right? You want to have your conductor say something and you believe them, not sit there and listen to something out of your own ears and not have it called out, you know? So I do try to be really straightforward with them, acknowledging that we're all singers whose voices are changing on us all the time. So that, the growing facility allows greater attention to that kind of intonation detail.
Do you find it, as singers age, do you find it easier or harder for them to adjust to tuning instructions?
Oh, that's interesting. You know, some of this has to do with vocal color. And I don't quite know how to get at it, but it would be interesting to hear your all's take on it. You know, with younger voices, there's often, we like to think of them as clear voices, but there's often a fair amount of air around them. Mm-hmm. And that's why you can have those boy sopranos that are not actually super accurate, but the sound homogenizes in a way that we still consider to be really beautiful blend. And so I kind of toy with that. Whereas if you are, you know, singing two on a part bird polyphony, two sopranos, it's like the how do you tune two piccolos kind of problem, right? So there, the intonation has to be exact because of that kind of approach and that kind of a vocal color.
There's actually an acoustic reason for that, which is that male sopranos tend to have a larger fundamental, the amplitude of the fundamental and the first formant are more bright, whereas with sopranos you get a lot of those upper partials where you know 3, 4,
Correct.
5, and 6 are and if the vibrato, not that straight tone is a replacement for intonation, it's not. But if the color is not well matched and well controlled, you really have like an acoustical dogfight happening up in the atmosphere that makes it, you get what I think is called acoustic roughness, and it is not, you know, and I think I don't know if it was Robert Shaw that said this. We're spending a lot of time quoting Robert Shaw tonight, but 3 is a section, 2 is competition. And it's a lot more work when you're 2 on a part to achieve that unanimity. You really are monitoring each other all the time, back and forth, to make sure that you're matching and blending.
Yeah, absolutely. I avoid 2 on a part. I avoid 3. I mean, just put one more person in there, and life is so much easier for everybody. You know, and there are, I mean, there's so many other things that will affect intonation too, like choral placement. Who sings next to who, and that has to do with some of what Scott was talking about. Do people's natural vibrato, do the you know, how much emphasis there is on which upper partials, which voices just tend to fight each other, and which voices are actually work nicely together and smoothly, and those singers don't have to try as hard. Right, there's so many things you can throw into the mix to work that out. My singers often wonder why I spend so much time with seating and changing seating, and you know, moving people around and doing this and that, and there's just so much that goes into it, right? It's and every factor affects another factor, and you know, yeah. That's where this little bit of gray, that's where that comes from.
The most amazing part of the voicing process for me is the recognition that people hear so differently out of each ear. And you can have 2 people stand, you know, this way and sing, and you flip them this way, and it works ever so much better. You know, we just hear differently, and I'm sure that there are so many other factors that go into it, but that's the one that is always just mind-blowing to me.
But these wonderful generative effects that you get from tuning an ensemble that are both acoustically generative and personally generative, and sometimes you just vibe better with, you know, you're able to, your perception is more keen next to other people, for whatever reason, you know. That's another variable. I think being teaching your choir to breathe together, making absolutely certain that the preparatory breath is the same length and the same coordinated effort before every phrase starts. That's key to, I mean, that's fundamental to the whole experience. But I think really having a choral ensemble understand how to breathe together, and that there's that, well, I mean, conspirare, right? The whole idea of breathing together is the name of that ensemble. And I think that that's a key part of developing choral tone in general, let alone intonation.
Yeah, totally agree. And so many choristers fight that, which is fascinating to me. And I think some of it is just because I don't work with children, right? But it's can be a lifetime of habits, and having sung with different conductors who maybe did or didn't emphasize certain things, and sometimes trying to get that ingrained concept in your choir that yes, if we do breathe together, and if our intentionality is in the same place, so much of everything else will fall in together. It just reminds me of a really interesting experience I had once. We were on tour, and we had this a situation in which we were performing half of a concert, and the host choir was performing the first half. We were performing the second half. We were going to end with a combined piece. So first half of the concert, my group is in the balcony listening to the other choir, which is great. And so intermission, my group goes to leave the balcony and go downstairs. There were stairs, there was an elevator. Half of them took the stairs, half of them got on this gigantic freight elevator, and it was big, and there were a lot of people on it. And the freight elevator got stuck between floors. And so those of us who had taken the stairs were waiting and wondering where everybody was. And finally we went out and figured out that this elevator was stuck between floors. They had to get like a building. This was at a university, had to get like a maintenance person to come and get the elevator. And these poor people, they were in the elevator 15 or 20 minutes. I don't know. It was horrible. They were just hot, having trouble breathing. It was awful, right? And so we're getting ready to go out on stage, and half the choir has been through this somewhat traumatic thing, especially if you're claustrophobic. The half of the choir was worried to death about them. And we're backstage, and we've got like a minute. We just have to get ourselves together and go on stage. And I just looked at the choir and I said, we can do this. You're fine. It's all going to be fine. Just go. We can do it. It's going to be fine. They went out on stage, and that choir had more cohesiveness, more like personal, communal ensemble and expression and oneness of intent than I have ever experienced. And it was just because they had gone through this weird thing, and they had to perform right away. And it was like, you could tell every person in the group was like, I'm taking care of this person next to me. And it would, and so, that is another kind of blend too. It's that oneness of purpose, that intent.
There's a psychology involved in blend in choral music. Without going to the extreme of a major stressful event like that one, how do you all help your singers to encourage that aspect of psychological blend?
Wow. Yeah.
Understanding the music, knowing the text, understanding the text, having a common, not necessarily common interpretation, but some sort of common relationship with the text. And with the style and the emotion, and I mean those are agreements that are an important part of communicating as an ensemble to the audience. I think it's our job to communicate that text, whether or not there's a translation in the program or super titles or whatever the case is. It's our job to communicate that. And often the conductor's the conduit for that communication. So I think that having some sort of unanimous idea about emotion and context and all of those things is another part of the blend.
Yeah. I really love what I do. I mean, I love singing a whole variety of music with a whole variety of people, but I love that I am primarily a liturgical choir master. And so my choirs are there with a very specific purpose of leading other people in prayer. And so there's a unity that comes from that. And I can say it so directly to children. You know, you are going to move someone and enable an experience for someone that could be life-changing. And let me tell you, 8-year-olds, boom, they're right there for you. And but it's true physiologically, they show up in a different way, right? Their posture is different, their attentiveness is different, and it's all the things that we need for actual choral blend. I mean, in a very real way. But you're right. It's such a great way to get into this, is that unity of focus is crucial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with all the specific techniques and pedagogy to back that up, right? So
Right.
you're giving your choir the tools in advance so that they can call on them
Right.
in order to do the important thing at that moment. Yeah, I think part of that, like, unity of approach and emotion, I mean, especially for an adult choir, a lot of that has to be a little bit self-discovered as well. So, rather than we as conductors telling our choir what's important about this piece or what it should mean or how it should make people feel or something, it's, there has to be a lot of that the choir, the individuals in the choir bring to it, and everybody might bring something a little different, but then we work to focus that energy and all those interpretive ideas, into the whole that makes the magic happen. Yeah, blend is magic, right? That's the answer to the question, Gary. What is blend? It's magic.
Magic.
I think we'll end up with the answer that blend is just everything, so it doesn't really exist. No, what you're talking about, Karen, there reminded me of, often choristers like to ask you for your favorite recording of the piece that you're conducting, so that they can go listen to that too and get a better sense. And I always tell them two things. One, even my favorite recording isn't the one that I agree with, or I don't necessarily agree with everything that's on that, because I'm my own person, my own artist. And second, I always hope that the singers will all go find everybody a different recording of the piece. And they will all come to the rehearsal with completely different biases of how it should go, so that we find our own collective reality. There's another notion of blend, perhaps, of collective reality.
So you like to throw everything in the mixer before you push the blend button, huh, Gary?
If cooking metaphors worked on me, I would probably say yes. We'll leave that aside.
That was great.
We have a great comment too from one of our attendees who sang with the choir years and years ago, that where they actually talked about what it was they were doing in order to create the collaboration. They had those conversations. Do you find, Karen, you talked a little about sometimes there's a self-discovery. Are there occasions when we invite the singers to have those conversations, to share those ideas? What's the appropriate platform for that?
Yeah, tricky. I generally don't do that in rehearsal, because there's so much that has to be accomplished in rehearsal, and it can things can dissolve so quickly if a lot of talking begins to happen. So and people are usually, they're there to sing, right? That's why they come. So I generally don't do that, but we have in the past numerous times. We may have done a workshop here and there, or had someone come in and work on something with the choir that's not just a regular rehearsal. Some of it is people talking outside of rehearsal. A lot of personal cohesiveness happens when you go out for a beverage after rehearsal with your choristers, and you might not talk about music at all, but you know, the connections develop that enable you to better understand the people you sing with, and therefore you will sing with them better. That's very abstract, but it's not
true.
untrue.
Having an
Yeah.
emotional, I mean, this is a very intimate thing that we do with each other. And just standing next to the act of standing next to somebody and breathing at the same time and singing the same words creates this sort of in natural intimacy, and it feels natural and normal to then go out and develop rapport and develop community that really sort of polishes that intimacy, that connection that gets conveyed to our audiences as music, as an ensemble. And there are some technical things that can happen in rehearsal. I know, sometimes it's all right. Basses go stand in a circle over here. Altos go stand in a circle and face each other over here, and isolating the sections and getting some section blend, or some sort of section listening going on. There are some of those technical things that can be done as well as workshops and other things like that. And I think we've all done a little bit of that to some extent. But Karen's point is really, really important. Choirs are a social animal.
Mm-hmm.
They are a social animal. And they are at their best when they are socialized, which I think, if I can just lean on something that we don't really want to talk about much, is why this Zoom era of rehearsals has been so grievous. It really has just been a very grievous thing for choristers, for choirs. It's been awful, and we're all really looking forward to being able to sense the person next to us. A lot of intonation is perception. It's vibration. It's feeling the breath and sensing the breath of the people next to you. It's feeling the vibration of their voice with yours, and you're perceiving that in your bones and in your ears. And Zoom just doesn't provide that. There's just no way. Mm-hmm. So the creatures that we've grown into as adults and even as young choristers has been isolated. And I for one am looking forward to that negotiation. Right? It's a negotiation with the people next to you until you kind of settle in and you're feeling like it's the way it's supposed to be. It feels good. It feels good because it's efficient. It's cooperative. That's a better word. Not efficient. It's cooperative. And that kind of cooperation feels good and it sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to what you all are saying, I love the sort of social safety that is built through those relationships. That's so important. The question about do you verbally work on collaborating these ideas together, collaborate on those ideas so that people know what they're coming into. To go back to something Karen said, the voicing process, the seating process can potentially be that. And I always sort of like, am I talking too much like a children's choir director? But I will say that there is a really amazing thing that happens when in front of their peers, you stand two people up and you have them sing together. Everyone in the room is hearing the same thing, right? Somebody's got a slightly more pointed voice. Somebody is a bit rounder, or there may be a vibrato thing, or so everybody's hearing it. But if you as a conductor in that moment can point out the thing that makes each of those voices unique and beautiful, there's a camaraderie. We've got those people on our team that comes into that, and they're learning in a very real way what they've just heard somebody sing in a particular way. Did they like it? What worked, what didn't? And you're making such stronger choral musicians because it's just a momentary masterclass in that process. So a lot of the time we don't have time for that process, or it's, in my case, sometimes I just need to put people next to each other that aren't going to talk to each other, whatever, that they're the nuts and bolts problems, right? But I think that this is that process has great potential beyond just where you're going to plop somebody in your choir.
It always amazes me that any conductor would ever let any tenor sit next to another tenor, because we're always gabbing back there. I think. These ideas being fun, especially coming out of this Zoom era, when you all return to in-person music making inside a room, when we won't need masks, so this might be 3 years from now, who knows? What kinds of priorities will you be giving to achieve this sense of blend, this, whether it be psychological or philosophical or practical?
I am in-person singing. I'm one of the fortunate few that gets to be an ensemble singer right now. And believe me, I say that with all the humility and respect to my peers, friends, colleagues, and companions everywhere that have not had the opportunity to do in-person ensemble singing yet. And we were working, and even in still some respects, where at St. Mark's, we've been doing quartets, and the approach as a quartet is completely different than when you have 8 or 12, or as we did on Sunday night, 20. And that